And I just think EFT embraces all of that. It's like we're mindful, we're very present with our body, we're very non-judgmental, we're compassionate, we're saying, yeah, we see you, we can hear you, we get it. Sometimes in the sessions I say, thank you for showing up. Even though it's really uncomfortable, it's almost like you thank that part for having the courage to show up and trying to express what it's needing for you. And I just think that's so healing. It calms your nervous system, and once your nervous system's calmed, you can then start to process the trauma or what's stuck.
Welcome to the Good Enough Counsellors podcast, where today I'm delighted to be interviewing Katie Bowers. Katie and I go a long way back. We first met when we were studying for our level 3 in counselling in, I think, 2007.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah. We then studied our diploma together, and we spent long hours chatting as we shared our drive to and from our joint placement over a few years. And we still meet up every month for lunch, and I guarantee one of us normally cries. We usually take it in turns.
Yes.
There's nothing like having a friend who knows you well. So I've invited Katie on the show today because Katie's career has taken a different course to the traditional private practice route, and yet Katie is passionate about the therapy she offers and has so much to share. I'd love you to hear how she's done it. So welcome, Katie.
Oh, thank you, Jo. It's so lovely talking to you.
We always enjoy it, don't we?
We absolutely do.
Just have to be careful to keep the podcast short as opposed to one of our marathon chats that we normally have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start at the beginning, Katie, because I'm sort of like, because I know you quite well, I think this might help to sort of tell your story a little bit. So can you tell me what made you want to study counselling?
Yeah, that's really easy. I was brought up in a household where you couldn't talk about anything and you had to brush it all under the carpet. And I just got to the point where I realised I needed to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I thought, and someone told me, oh, I found this course that you might like, and it's about counselling. So I thought, oh, okay, if someone tells me I have to do 30 hours of counselling to qualify, then it's like I'm not breaking the family rules. I basically did it to work on my own stuff, really.
Yeah, yeah. And how effective did you find the help that you had back at that stage?
Yeah, I personally didn't find the actual counselling very helpful for me personally. I would notice I got triggered in the sessions. Sometimes I'd freeze. It was like, it's like I could see on the counsellor's face that, well, the answer's obvious, and there'd be this long silence and I'd just go more and more into freeze and not have a clue how to answer it.
Yeah. And
from that place, my brain had just stopped working, so I couldn't do anything from that place.
Yeah. So it sort of felt like when the counsellor was with you that they were sort of asking you questions and that somehow there was some sort of answer that you should be able to come up with, and that pressure just made you feel like, oh, I don't know what to say. And yeah,
absolutely. And I remember one time she was saying, oh, it's like scales, you're doing this extreme or that extreme, and where's the middle? I'm thinking, I don't know where the middle is. And I just felt like, so stuck. And my brain just went to mush in the session. And so I really struggled. I kept going, I really did. I kept trying.
That is one of the things that I think is very noticeable about you, that once you're committed to doing something, you really do it sort of heart and soul.
Yeah.
Katie's a marathon runner. She's run lots of marathons, and this is when you've got something to work towards, you do really work at it. So, I think you probably sort of treated your counselling as the same thing. I'm here, I'm going to do it, and really tried, but it just didn't really work out for you, did it?
No, and I think because I don't think it was really known much about trauma in the nervous system then. I don't remember really being taught much about that.
I don't think so.
So I think there's huge learning since, but I think I kept getting triggered in sessions, and you cannot progress from that place at all.
Yeah. You just keep getting this sort of trauma would just be resurfacing all the time.
Yeah. So I got frustrated. I kept thinking, well, like what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with me because it sounds like it's working for everyone else. It was frustrating.
Yeah. So If we move on a little bit, so, you know, obviously we did our counselling placements together, didn't we?
Yes.
We both did similar placements in that we worked with children and we worked with women in refuges. And then what happened once we'd finished the diploma? How did the counselling carry on? Did you carry on?
I convinced myself, and I now realise it was just a belief, that I thought, oh no, I'll get the best experience if I continue in the women's refuge, and I want to have, you know, like the more challenging the clients, I'll learn so much from that. And so I put off setting up my own private practice where everyone else was doing it around me, but actually it was fear. I realise I just didn't believe in myself enough to do it. Mm-hmm. And I had managed to convince myself I was going down a certain route, but it didn't work out. And actually, I think I got a bit burnt out working with the women because I didn't have the tools to deal with the trauma side of things.
Yeah.
So like a couple of years into it or something, a dear friend died of cancer quite suddenly.
Oh, yeah.
And so for ethical reasons, I thought, I'm going to pause. But actually, during that pause, I reflected and I thought, this isn't quite working for me. The pause ended up as a stop, really. Yeah,
yeah. How long did that last for, do you think?
Maybe 8 years or something.
Oh, really? I was going to say 5, but it was a while, wasn't it?
But the whole time, I kept reading books, I kept trying to do courses, and like we would swap book ideas.
Yeah.
And I remember asking you, right, I understand the triangle, the
drama
victim.
triangle.
Yeah, and I said, but what's the answer to that, And you give me the TED book suggestion, and so I'd read that, and like, why am I not shifting? I'd try and keep working on myself.
So let's fast forward, because this is where we come to the really sort of like who you are and what you're doing now, because I think it's really, this is so, it just dovetails really nicely, doesn't it? So let's fast forward. What's made the difference and what are you doing now?
So a dear friend of mine, I think that was you, said to me, have you tried tapping, EFT tapping? And at first, I'll be honest with you, I thought, that's a bit weird.
It is, when you first hear about it, you do think that's a bit weird, yeah.
And I thought, well, how on earth is that going to help me? But then I think on several occasions you mentioned it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to read up about it, as I always do.
Yeah.
And I think I did a Udemy course on it or something. And then I think by the time I next met you, I'd booked a course.
That's right. I was I was blown away because I'd sort of mentioned it to you, because I was sort of thinking about, and I still haven't done any training in it, because I was sort of thinking, it might be quite useful to add that. I could use it with working with my coaching clients. And I'd sort of mentioned it to you. The next thing I knew, you said, I booked onto a 5-day course. And I was like, what? You beat me to it. So tell me a bit about that and what it was like.
So, yes, it was in Solihull, and it was with Carl Dawson. Mm-hmm. He's one of the master trainers, one of the original ones from Gary Craig.
Right.
And it was, you reach level 2 as an EFT practitioner, and then there were 2 days added on for matrix re-imprinting, which is his own style.
Yeah.
It was quite an emotional 5 days, I'm not going to lie. And so I'm not sure how much went in, but I knew I came away absolutely loving it. I felt some shifts and that I'd never experienced before.
Yeah, because he actually, you were really brave, weren't you? And you volunteered to be somebody who he sort of like practiced on. Yes. Or demonstrated. You were the sort of, the guinea pig, weren't you?
Yes. Which for me, and not wanting much attention, was nerve-wracking enough. But then to tap on that and to release some stuff that actually, so we went to an event that I think was about 5 at school.
Yeah.
It's an event I've kept going back to that's actually caused a lot of impact in my life, really. He went through the story technique and movie technique. It was it was very effective. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And actually during it, my body started to shake, to release. Yeah.
The trauma.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a bit more about it for the people who don't know? A little bit more about how EFT sort of works and why it's effective with trauma? Yeah,
so EFT is where you focus on the issue. It could be a body issue, like a backache, or it could be a thought, or it could be an emotion. And while you're focusing on that issue, you tap on the meridian points. And the idea is that it sends a signal to your brain to calm your nervous system down. Mm-hmm. And from that calm place, you're then able to make a choice as to how you want to proceed, as opposed to react from fear.
Yeah. So presumably there's something around, because we've got that sort of prefrontal cortex, haven't we? And we've got our amygdala. And a lot of the time, if we're triggered, we're coming from that amygdala. And somehow the tapping helps you to come from that calm place as opposed to that sort of scared, traumatised place.
Because you can't process anything from a traumatised place, or it doesn't even have to be traumatised. It could just be, say someone cuts you up in this driving and you suddenly go, oh gosh, that knocked me. Yeah. And so in that moment, you're in a bit of fight, flight, possibly freeze. Yeah. And, you know, so that you're getting that cortisol rushing through you, the stress hormone, and you can't think rationally. You can't make a sensible decision from that place.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just saying to you before we started that I watched your little video yesterday about when you lost your credit card. So would you like to tell people that story? Because I think it's a really great illustration of how EFT has actually helped you. Yeah,
absolutely. So due to my childhood life and then my first marriage, I got very anxious around shouty people and criticism, and I would get really anxious if I was late home or had done anything wrong. And so when I discovered on the dog walk the other day that my card wasn't there, initially, just for a split second, my heart went. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I just noticed it completely calm down.
Yeah.
And it was just the most amazing feeling. It was like, oh my word, this is what EFT's done for me.
Yeah.
It's helped me calm myself down in this normal triggering, what would normally trigger me.
Yeah.
And in that moment then I had the clarity to look around and cancel my card on my app. And then as I was walking back to the car with Bella, my dog, I started to think, oh, I've got to now tell my husband and say, oh, you know, I've lost my card. And I could feel my heart going a little bit. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just tap on that. So I tapped on the way back to the car. And by the time I got home, I just said really calmly and just very gently, like, oh, just to let you know, I've happened to have lost my card, but it's okay, you know, I've cancelled it and it's all fine, I've done everything I can. And it was absolutely fine, you know, did a normal response.
Yeah.
Because my brain's still in the past, you know.
You're just expecting that, and fearing what you've experienced in the past, but somehow it's resolved. I don't know if you'd be open to telling us this, but I remember you telling me about a time where you'd been in a car with your previous husband and he'd driven quite aggressively, I think.
Yeah.
And you took that to EFT, didn't you? I don't know if that was Matrix Imprinting or the movie, or can you tell us a bit about do you feel okay to tell us about that and what it was like?
So yes, my ex and I used to play tennis. I think I normally avoided partnering him, but I don't think I could avoid it this particular time, and I'd obviously done something wrong. We'd lost the match, and it was all my fault, basically. And in the car home, he was very angry and ranting.
Yeah.
And as we come out of the tennis club, we go under a railway bridge, and it was like he was accelerating towards the edge of the bridge. And of course, it was the passenger side where I was sitting that would have felt like it would have gone into the side of the bridge.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I genuinely was terrified. I thought he was going to crash the car. So yes, I took this to a session, you know, my EFT sessions, and we did matrix re-imprinting on this. And so matrix re-imprinting is where you go and speak to your younger version.
Yeah.
You actually like tap with her, and you sort of get her safe out of the situation, freeze everything. You've got this remote control type thing. You just freeze everything, make them feel safe, and then you just tap with them and say, how are you feeling right now? And you tap down their nervous system, and also obviously yours. And then sort of basically just as everything's coming up from their fears, their beliefs in the moment, and all those sort of things, and just say, okay, what do you want to resource yourself now? That sort of thing, and you resource that person to help them. So in that instance, it's like I could practice to say, no, don't do this to me, or whatever I needed to do in that moment, you know. And it's almost like you're practicing having the courage to say what you wish you'd done or said or whatever like that. And that's so resourceful. And even though you could say, well, it's not true, it didn't happen, yes, that's okay. But the point is, and I've learnt this through matrix re-imprinting, that first of all, if you say, that didn't happen though, okay, so what's the fear there? So you tap down all the resistance of changing, of improving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And And that's brilliant, because it then creates another aspect of the issue that you can tap down.
Yeah.
So the idea with tapping is to tap down all the aspects, all the trigger points.
Yeah.
And so the more you can test it and find, okay, so what's stopping you doing that? What's getting in the way? And then tap everything that comes up.
Yeah. So it sort of helped you to almost be compassionate towards that younger self who was so scared.
Yeah.
And help her to know that in that moment she was sort of okay, that she could have chosen if she'd needed to. Would that be right to say?
Yes, and yeah, totally. And that she did get through it.
Yeah.
You can reassure her she does get through this, it's okay. And that it's almost like you're saying, I'm with you now, you're not alone, because that's quite a crucial element sometimes as well.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely giving them compassion, saying, yes, this is awful, you shouldn't be going through this. And just acknowledging all that's going on for them, because that's so often denied, isn't it? Even we deny it for ourselves even. So just to acknowledge to that younger version of yourself, yeah, this is awful, you shouldn't be experiencing this. I'm here with you now, supporting you.
And it's you, your older self, that's there with the younger self. And it's sort of like almost that inner strength that is sort of within all of us, but so often we lose sight of it, don't we? I think it sort of sounds like you're reconnecting to that true self, maybe, if there is such a thing. But
but also the resourceful self that got stuck at that point in time, and it's just like it's a way of reminding you that you are actually a resourceful person, and that you have got all these skills, and it's almost like unfreezing you in that moment. I mean, that's not proper English necessarily, but you know what I mean. Yeah,
that's what I picked up just then, that self that was, so it's almost sort of like you've got stuck.
Yes.
And the tapping helps to just release that stuck person.
Yes, and carry on the story then, but you carry it on in a way that's more healing.
Yeah. And I think that really brings me on to sort of something that I wanted to ask you about, because sort of having known you over all this time, I know that sort of starting up in your own practice was like a really big, like you said there was fear.
Yes, huge fear.
So it sounds, I mean, I've seen a huge change in you since you've gone on this journey of EFT. And tell us what you've done since.
Yeah.
So you did the course. Tell us what happened.
So then I came back from the course, and I think everyone thought I was a bit loopy because I was just buzzing. I don't think they'd seen me quite like that since, you know. I just thought, you know what, I need to work on myself. I'm going to go and get some support and help. And so I didn't feel I was in the right place to support clients at that point.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, I'm going to have the evidence myself by working through my own stuff. Yeah. So for a year, I worked on my own stuff, and then gradually I started bit by bit, because I remember every time I'd say, so are you going to start business? And no, not yet. And I just, you know, it was like, no, I'm too scared. And so I just kept tapping through all of that, everything that would come up. Oh, I don't want to go on social media. I absolutely hated social media. That's what I convinced myself of. But actually, I've worked through that now. I've completely tapped through that. Yeah.
I'd love to touch on that, actually, because I can remember, you going on Facebook when your family first went on Facebook, just to sort of keep an eye on what was happening, didn't you? And you weren't active on Facebook at all. You just had an account, didn't you, just to keep an eye on things.
Yeah.
And you went from somebody who didn't do any sort of social media to now you do a reel every day, don't you, virtually, I think?
Yeah.
So how did that happen? How did you move from that person who just hated social media to now someone who comes across certainly as confident and sharing stuff on social media? And I think you've now opened a Facebook group. Before we move on, tell us what the name of the Facebook group is.
Mums Seeking More.
Mums Seeking More. We'll come back to it. But so tell us about, so you've gone from completely silent on Facebook to opening a Facebook group, doing reels on Instagram every day. Tell us how that happened. So, how did you manage it?
So I guess I was frustrated with myself that I knew that was the way forward to promote my business. And I just kept thinking, it's almost like I'd ask myself, okay, what is stopping me? And I'd think, oh goodness, people are going to judge me. So, right, I'll tap on people are going to judge me. And then I think, okay, what else is stopping me? Oh, people might think I'm talking absolute nonsense. Okay, let's tap on that then. So I just kept asking myself, what's stopping me? Or it might not even be words. It might be, oh, my chest feels so tight right now. So I'd tap on that. I just tried to work through all the different aspects of what was holding me back, all my beliefs that were keeping me small.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not good enough. What on earth have I got to contribute to the world? All those things,
Yeah.
And it's almost like I just tick them all off, tick the list.
And gradually sort of gained more confidence.
Yeah, and then like I remember my very first video was in my vegetable plot. I set the camera up, and I think it was something to do with a family member had just phoned me. I was worrying about something. I said, oh, I could do a video on this. So I did it, and I was shaking afterwards, so I kept tapping.
Yeah.
And so at every opportunity, I just, like, when the emotion arises, I just tap on it just to release it. And then whatever next arises, I then tap on that. It's like a progression.
Yeah. So how much sort of time would you say you spent sort of tapping?
Oh, I even find myself tapping even when I don't.
It's become so habitual now.
Yeah, because I'll tap on a dog walk. I'll just tap all the time. Like any time a thought comes in my head, I'll just suddenly find, oh yeah, I'm tapping on that. So I just find it so helpful. In the moment is like when you're actually feeling it. That's the perfect time to release it.
Yeah, so will you sort of like, because obviously we've talked about the meridian points, which is sort of like eyebrows and around the eyes and under the nose, chin. Collarbone, under the arm, isn't it? On top of the head. Will you go through all of those places if you're tapping, or do you just sort of tend to tap on, say, your collarbones? Or?
Well, it depends where I am. So if I'm in private, I'll do all the tapping points. But if I'm out like on a dog walk, I'll just, there's these finger points, these points on your finger where it's the side of where your nail and your skin meet, sort of thing. And you just gently tap on each finger. And you could do it like if you're at a dinner out in a restaurant and you're feeling a bit anxious, you could tap under the table, nobody would know. So you can tap down the anxiety or wherever you are. So I'm more discreet when I'm out and about, but
so I know you've started working with clients now, haven't you?
Yes.
You've done quite a lot of sort of practice with other people as well, haven't you?
Yes, I did an awful lot of swaps.
So where you'll work with another EFT therapist and and what sort of things do you like to work with in terms of the types of clients that you work with?
I really like working with mums who are struggling with their what I call emotional rucksack. And it's where your beliefs and your thoughts are holding you back from being your best self. And like certainly for me, when her kids have gone to university, when they were growing up and not needing you as much, and you suddenly think, what's next for me? Like I've got this whole next chapter looming, and I feel a bit. I personally suddenly realised, my lack of confidence and didn't believe in my skill set and all those sort of things, and so I can really relate to other mums that are maybe thinking the same sort of things.
Hence the Facebook group, Mums Seeking More.
The hopefully a supportive group for that.
Sort of reaching out and helping women who've maybe reached that stage of their lives where they know there's more, but they don't know how to get there because they're being held back by their beliefs. So if we go back, we just sort of wind it back actually. I was just thinking about what you said about traditional counselling. Because you felt that you were sort of like asked a question and then you froze. So what is it about EFT that's better for you, do you think, than the traditional counselling?
So for me, the thing I think so effective about EFT is that it's somatic and it includes mindfulness as well. And actually, I was listening to this, I don't know how to pronounce it, Nicabam or something, Nicabm. There was this Treating Trauma Master series a few weeks ago that I was listening to. And they actually said that, it's about addressing your thoughts, emotions, beliefs and your body. And I just think EFT embraces all of that. It's like we're mindful, we're very present with our body. We're saying, we're very non-judgmental, we're compassionate, we're saying, yeah, we see you, we can hear you, we get it. And it's almost like, sometimes in the sessions I say, thank you for showing up. Even though it's really uncomfortable, it's almost like you thank that part for having the courage to show up and trying to express what it's needing for you. And I just think that's so healing. It calms your nervous system, and once your nervous system's calmed, you can then start to process the trauma or what's stuck.
So it's sort of like releasing it through the body.
Yes, yeah. It's like these meridians, and actually they've been proven scientifically. I don't know whether you knew this. They've injected some dye into the meridians and then shown it on MRI scans. So,
really?
Yeah. So, I mean, previously people thought it was all very woo-woo, but actually it really does. They've proven it exists, so it's amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know, sort of talking to Claire, who's my EFT therapist, that she says it's been really effective around eating disorders as well. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. And PTSD.
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing for all sorts of things. You know, it can be for trauma, where you can calm your nervous system, a bit like me and my debit card. You really can't do a lot until you've calmed your nervous system down. So you have to think clearly. But then on the other scale of things, you know, say someone cuts you up in the traffic jam, you can tap on that and release that so that you don't go and shout at your loved ones or something.
Yeah.
So
do a bit of road rage. Yeah.
It's so effective for so many things.
Yeah. Because effectively it's just dealing with that part of ourselves that gets triggered, or the different parts of ourselves that get triggered by things.
And the other thing is, so for me, I get migraines. You know, if I've had a stressful period and I haven't really attended to my, you know, if I've not necessarily paid attention, then the tension will build up and all of a sudden my body will shout at me, alert, alert, you know, you've got to stop, you've got to attend to this. And so that'll be a migraine for me. And I think, uh-oh, I haven't tapped enough.
Oh, really?
So, so, you know, like your body tells you what it needs.
Yeah. So do you find it effective for helping you with migraines?
For me, I can't tap. It depends how intense the migraine is. So what you can do is you can gently touch the meridian points as opposed to tapping, because that can be overstimulating if you've got a migraine.
Right.
So you can just touch on the meridian points and focus. But or you can do a lovely thing like tap and breathe, where you just tap on each meridian point and breathe in and out. And so things like that can be helpful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I was just thinking, because yesterday I just felt really just not good. You know, I was tired. I felt a bit sick, a bit headachy. You know, sort of recovering from late nights and coming back from holiday and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So do you think it would have helped with something like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If that had been me, I'd have maybe tapped on each symptom. Yeah. And sometimes I even ask it, okay, if you could talk to me right now, what would you say I need? What is it you're trying to tell me? Yeah. And it's incredible, actually. All of a sudden, like ping, a thought will come in my head, and I think, like today I was tapping, and I said, oh, I've got this feeling in my heart, but I have no words that go with it. And then you just started you just started there tapping on this feeling, and then I was like, oh yeah, I know what that's about. It just suddenly came up. Yeah. And so then it takes you down the road of where you need to work on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I had someone who contacted me recently, actually, because I said, you know how some people talk about like the inner critic and they can hear a voice in their head?
Yes, yeah.
And someone contacted me after one of my last podcasts where I'd said, I don't really have like it's not as though I can hear a voice sort of saying, oh, you're rubbish, you're not good enough. I just get a feeling. Right. You know, and it's a feeling maybe of heaviness. And quite often if I think about it, I can think back to when that feeling started, and then I realise that I had a bit of comparison or something that triggered that not good enough feeling. Yeah. But what this lady said to me who got in touch was, oh, thank goodness that someone else has said, I don't hear it as a voice. Okay, she said, I just have a feeling. Yeah. And I think this is part of what EFT is really good at, isn't it? That
absolutely.
It helps you almost put feelings into words.
Yes. And it could be a visual even. Like sometimes I just get a visual of a scene, and I like when I was feeling that feeling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's not always a word or a voice, it could be a visual.
So is it like, do you think that's like a memory?
Yes, yeah.
So that's almost like perhaps where it stems from?
Yes, yes. And you can go to that memory and you can actually even think, okay, was there a time before that I also experienced this? Because you can go round in a loop of your beliefs. It's almost like you can have this belief, I'm not good enough. And then you say, see, I've got the evidence because that time I wasn't good enough. But actually, it was just because you were so stressed about doing it that your cortisol kicked in and your brain went mush and you know, and sort of almost became not good enough because of that. Do you know what I mean? So but this is built up of like lots of evidence over time. So if you can backtrack to the first time it started, you can rock the foundations of it almost, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think Claire, my EFT therapist, she says it's sort of like a table with four legs, and you take one of the legs out and then the table can collapse.
Absolutely, yeah. And the earlier that, so the table, the flat bit of the table is the belief and the legs are the stories, the events.
Right, yeah.
And so if you can go earlier and earlier, the better. But sometimes it's not safe to, so that's absolutely fine. You start on the latest ones until it feels safe to go.
Yeah.
To the other ones.
Because I guess, you know, I'm not a trauma trained therapist anymore because, you know, I've stopped doing counselling now. But I know sort of trauma therapists are very careful about, they don't want to re-traumatise people, so they might not go back to the traumatic event. Is that sort of what EFT does, or how does it work with EFT? So
with EFT, we approach it really slowly and gradually. So it might come up that, oh yes, there's this event that's really awful, but you can sense that they're just not ready to go there. Mm-hmm. So you sort of like put it in a safe box and say, okay, put that box somewhere in your mind. Could be at the bottom of the sea, wherever it feels safe, but a long, long way. So it's like you're dissociating from it.
Yeah.
And then you tap on, even though I don't want to look at the stuff in that box. So you literally start so far away from it, and you gradually creep closer and closer. And you could just say, if this event had a title, what would it be? And then you tap on that, and so you're just getting tiny bit closer until the nervous system feels safe enough to visit the memory. So we do it so gradually and constantly bearing in mind the nervous system. There's no point, you know, you can't work if it's triggered. So it's constantly keeping that safe. That must be quite... That takes skill, really, though, doesn't it? I mean, that's presumably something you learn when you're sort of on your course. It's like you need to be really observant of their breathing, of facial expressions, or they might take a sigh, or I don't know, you know, you just have to be really observant and think, okay, what happened there, you know? And they say, oh, no, it's too scary. And because they might not always verbalise it straight away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then you just see the cues and think, okay, let's take a step back from this and do it more gradually. Just sort of keep them safe. Yeah. And presumably, because I know sort of like, I interviewed Emma Radway-Bright a few episodes ago, and she said, it's a lovely story because she went to go on a different course that's also called EFT, because this is emotional freedom technique you're tapping, isn't it? Yes. And there's another therapy that's called EFT, and she thought she was going on that. But then she ended up on an EFT course and she thought, I'm just going to, I'll send them a note at lunchtime. But she said by lunchtime she was completely hooked. And she said, you know, it's such a simple technique, but she uses it an awful lot with people because it's so easy to do. I suppose that clients can use it themselves as well. Yes, totally. And the thing I think is a really good thing to do is, you know, like a mind map. I always think, put the issue on the centre of a bit of paper and then say, okay, so what is this all about? And then you just draw, like, I don't know, it could be anxiety. Okay, so why am I anxious? And just keep filling out this mind map. Mm-hmm. And then just tap on each element of the mind map. Yeah. I think that's a really good way of tapping on by yourself, because the thing is, when people say, oh no, EFT didn't work for me, actually what happens is that they haven't covered every aspect. Mm-hmm. And so as you say, you're scared of spiders, let's say, and say it could be the legs that's frightening you. So you tap down the legs. And then they say, oh, it's the hairiness of it. So we tap down the hairiness of it. They say, I'm still scared of spiders. Well, that's because we haven't tapped down every aspect yet, you know. Yeah. And so as soon as one clears, another one has room to surface. Yeah. So if anyone says it hasn't worked, it's because you haven't found every aspect yet. And that's why I treat it like being a detective, really, because you sort of have to cleverly, like, just keep testing and finding clever ways of finding out what's remaining.
And presumably that's why, because this is what happens to me. I mean, I've been working with my EFT therapist for several years now. And I can get really frustrated with myself, actually, because I'll go back and I'll say to Claire, oh, we're back here again.
Yes, yes.
But it's sort of like, from what you're saying, it's like, because you haven't actually finished yet.
Yeah.
It's
so, for instance, my story that I went to, we were saying about the course that I went to and I actually was tapped on, sort of thing. It was to do with when I was 5 and I'd gone to the teacher to ask for some help, and they said, no, go back to your chair. And I was so anxious about getting it wrong, and everyone else seemed to know what they were doing and I didn't know what to do, that I ended up being sick. And it caused everyone around the table to be sick as well, which wasn't, because she was even more cross with me. But there were so many aspects to that, like the expression on her face, the tone of her voice. There was what I made it mean. There was, like, kids' faces around the table. Do you know what I mean? There were so many reasons to keep revisiting that scene. Mm-hmm. And until you've cleared every last one, it's going to feel like it's still there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think you've told me that before, that sort of the different aspects of it. Yeah. And how you can visit something that's so, as a little child, might be feel quite insignificant in a sense, and maybe something that you think you shouldn't have taken so much to heart or whatever, and yet it's so important to you, and it's really influenced you throughout your life.
It has massively,
to lift that, and like you say, and you sort of compare that to the credit card thing, which you could have thought, oh, I've done something wrong.
Yes.
And yet you were able to sort of say to your husband quite calmly, I've lost my credit card.
Yeah, complete change.
So it's sort of like one of those table legs have been knocked out.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And to actually notice it in the moment felt so significant.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my goodness, my body's calm. This is amazing. It's like the summer party. It was such a lovely feeling.
And I imagine as well that, I mean, if you're somebody who does live with a lot of anxiety, that does have an effect on your body, doesn't it?
Massively,
so, not hunching your shoulders up, which is something that I do. So, it would affect your bodily health as well, in a sense.
Yes.
If you can release this sort of thing.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
I was going to say, the other thing that I found really helpful, I don't know if this happens with you, but when I'm tapping, so we'll tap on something, and I think for me, often I'm seeing things in very black and white terms. But what I find as I tap around it is it can get reframed. Like, it can be the same sentence, but it can have a completely different meaning.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a good example, but it'll just change it completely. And
absolutely.
And I'll suddenly think, well, actually, that's not a bad thing. That's actually quite a good thing. Or, it sort of changes your attitude to things, doesn't it?
It really does. It completely reframes it. And you start to see, so say there's been an argument or something, and say I always imagine like you've got this rucksack and everyone's got these red buttons on. And like, say someone said, oh, you're so useless, press the button.
Yeah.
And that triggers that person, sort of thing. And they don't know they've triggered your button, but you feel it. And so when you then tap on that argument, you suddenly say, oh, do you know what? I think that comment triggered them, and hence why they then said that to me. Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. They were equally as triggered as I was.
Yeah.
And so it just helps you say, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough.
So, Katie, we're just sort of coming towards the end. I'm sure people are going to find this episode absolutely fascinating, actually. And I think it might be worth, perhaps, if you'd like to share with me, I'll put it in the show notes, sort of where you did your training.
Yeah,
but also,
absolutely.
how can people find you, and how can people work with you if they're sort of interested in doing some tapping? And
yeah, so they can find me. My website's Katie's EFT Coaching, and I'm on social media as well. I also offer a free EFT taster session, so that, because I strongly believe you need to try it to actually feel the effect of it and notice how it feels.
Yeah. Because,
so many people do think, oh, that's a bit odd, and I get that because that's how I felt.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so, if you fancy working with me but just want to try it out first, then book a taster session.
Brilliant, yeah. And I'll put the website and your social media in the show notes. I was just thinking, actually, when you said that, because I think sometimes what happens with me, I don't know if this happens with you, but I can do my tapping session.
Yeah.
And it'll be sort of like, we'll just work through it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people are tapping, they say, oh, tell me what your feelings are on a scale of 1 to 10, don't they? And they're trying to get you to tap, to get the numbers down. Well, in fact, I think for me that sometimes feels a bit too pressurised. So Claire doesn't do it with me quite so often as she used to do.
Yeah.
But often what I'll find is that it will be after the session that I'll feel completely different. And usually what happens is I'll go back and see Claire the following week. And she said, how's your week been? I said, well, I can't remember what we talked about last time.
Yes.
Because it's just gone, hasn't it? So whatever the problem was.
Yeah.
And I often find that it's afterwards that I really notice the difference rather than during the session.
Yes.
So it's almost, I just want to say that for anybody who maybe does come and try a taster session with you, that certainly for me, it's like, give it some time as well.
Yeah, because like the energy's moving. It's like you've had this stuck energy, you've tapped through it, and it's now it's flowing through you and releasing.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you've got to let the dust settle and say, oh, okay, how do I feel now?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, let dust settle. Oh, Katie, thank you so much for coming along and telling us all about EFT. And I know people will be interested in it both from like a personal therapeutic point of view for themselves, but also I think more people are talking about EFT in the therapy world because, like you say, because we know so much more about trauma and it's a somatic approach. Yeah. So I think a lot of people will be interested to have heard how you use it and how it can help people, how it's helped us too as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because, I mean, the Katie that I know now is grown so much since you've been doing EFT, haven't you? And just seeing you take these leaps and bounds and setting up private practice, doing your social media, all these things that before you were so scared of doing.
Yeah.
And now you're just doing it, aren't you? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for coming along.
Oh, thanks so much, Jo.
Thanks for listening. Do come and join my Facebook community, Good Enough Counsellors. And for more information about how I can help you develop your private practice, please visit my website, josephinehughes.com. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love it if you could share it with a fellow therapist or leave a review on your podcast app. And in closing, I'd love to remind you that every single step you make gets you closer to your dream. I really believe you can do it.